This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Hello, world, and welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. Today's sponsor is A2 Hosting. I've been using A2 Hosting solid state hosting solutions for our website at geekleader.com for many years now, and absolutely love their support, their service, and all the features that you get. You get access to cPanel. You get all of the things that you can imagine for a great WordPress experience, including their A2 optimized WordPress, which does extra security checks, extra lockdown. You can lock down your editor file so you can't edit anything inside there. You get alerts whenever there are file changes that are done. You can also do automatic updates, backups, and more with A2 Hosting. So highly recommend it. Go to geekleader.com/A2 to get more information and to sign up for their solid state turbocharged speed hosting today. Again, that's geekleader.com/A2. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Tony Castillo on the show. We're going to talk about a little bit different stuff than just general leadership. We're going to talk about that too, I'm sure, and a little bit different than just general technology. We're going to talk about health, nutrition, and fitness, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And just so I don't forget, Tony is a coach and head of the Nutrition for Performance group, which we're going to talk a little bit about what they do there and see if it's an opportunity to help us out too. And he's going to pick my brain a little bit too about my diet and exercise and things I don't do that I probably should be doing. But either way, it's going to be a fun conversation. Tony, welcome to the show.
John, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here, and I'll definitely be picking your brain on your diet and nutrition.
If you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background, how you got into what it is that you do, and why you do it.
Absolutely. So, excuse me. So, as you said, my name is Tony Castillo. I'm a sports and performance dietitian and nutrition expert. So, my journey, and we're going to get into the real of who I am today, John. So, at 13 years old, I was overweight. I had man boobs. And at 13 years old, I went to, I'm going to be honest here. At 13 years old, I went to go see a urologist with my mom. So I want you to imagine a 13-year-old boy with his mom, and the urologist was a female. And the urologist says, drop your pants. At 13 years old, I was super scared, John. I was like, what's going on here? My mom's behind me. The last time my mom saw me without bottoms, I was probably a baby getting a bath from her, right? Well, the urologist went and tested, and she had some that looked like Mardi Gras beads, all different sizes, not the small ones. I've had to clarify that because someone once said, you're telling me your testicles look like Mardi Gras beads, the small ones? I was like, no. Let me clarify. They're big beads and small beads. So the urologist pulled something out that looked like that, John. And she compared and she said, Tony, everything looks normal. My blood work looked normal. I just had gynecomastia, which is just man boobs, unfortunately. And that was due to having excess weight. And at 13 years old, the doctor said there was two options. It was either testosterone replacement therapy or plastic surgery. Luckily, I took neither of those two options, John. And throughout my middle school and high school, I was bullied for my weight. I was actually offensive lineman in football, so I weighed about 250 pounds, a very sedentary lifestyle, and turning into an athlete. Well, at the end of my high school years, I found a friend of mine who gave me a nutrition plan, and it was a bodybuilding nutrition plan and a bodybuilding weightlifting plan. And I followed it, John, and I lost the weight, and great. Then I went to college, and as we stated before this, I went and joined a fraternity, and guess what? Beer, pizza, tacos, chicken wings all tasted much better than the meal plan I was on. So unfortunately, I gained all the weight. And I tried every diet that was popular at the time, which included Atkins diet, included the South Beach diet. Having fraternity brothers that were going to the gym, I'd go with them, and they'd tell me about different pre-workouts and different protein powders to take. And I was like, wow, why is it working for them and not me? So I started to have this disordered relationship with food, and I got my degree in biology and chemistry. Then I graduated because I was going to be pre-med, but, my heart wasn't really set in that. I knew there was something else, and I wanted to help people, and I didn't know how. So my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, she was taking this ballerina skinny tea for weight loss, and it said only for women. I was taking it behind her back, John, because I was really desperate for anything. And fun fact, it was just a laxative. I was also taking Hydroxycut, John. I tried everything. And eventually I started doing 2 workouts a day, counting every calorie, anything I could to really figure it out if it fits your macros. And at the end of it, it was a Halloween night. I was with my girlfriend, who, as I said, is my wife now, and I broke my foot dancing. And it was because I had this disordered relationship with food and working out so much, I wasn't fueling myself. And the first thought that came through my head was, how am I going to work out? And that should have not been the first thought that came to my head after breaking my foot. It should have been, how am I going to recover? So from there, my wife invited me to an open house. I gained the weight again, yo-yo dieting, and it was a degree in nutrition. I was like, nutrition? I didn't know you could get a degree in this. I thought you could just work at a gym and you automatically get a nutrition certificate, right? And there's so many out there. So I sat for my first class, John, and I absolutely loved it. I knew that's exactly where I wanted to be at. So I got my master's in nutrition and I interned at a hospital down in Miami, Florida. Then I went to go work at the University of Florida with their athletes and the Toronto Blue Jays after that and the Major League Baseball team to work with their athletes because I want to know how come they look the way they do and perform the way they do when they recommend eating foods, let's say such as Wheaties or dairies, when we're told to be away from that, not eat those foods, right? We keep hearing, especially now in the media and then, just not to eat those foods. But these athletes at the highest peak of their performance are eating them. So in my head, I was like, all right, it's got to be steroids, got to be some supplements. What is it? Well, they really had, most of them had a great relationship with food. Not saying there isn't eating disorders or disordered eating in sports, but they understood how to use food as fuel. And now I've been in my private practice going on my 5th year and working with a lot of emerging leaders, especially in the tech space. I see that a lot of things I worked on with those athletes are the same things working on with these leaders because they have to perform at their best, and having a better understanding on how to use those foods and how to fuel their bodies, especially now in sports. As we know, esports is a big thing, which is very similar to what's going on in the tech world, that sedentary lifestyle, energy drinks because they don't have energy all day. They might have brain fog, not having stamina, has really led me to really work in this industry to help those people, because taking the knowledge of working with professional athletes is what those leaders need when it comes to the nutrition space in order to perform at their best. So sorry for the long-winded story, but I want to at least give you on how I ended up here. So thanks for your time.
Yeah, no, that's good. So I do want to talk a little bit about diet performance and things like that, because a lot of us, especially like if you're a new leader in technology, you've probably been sitting in a desk for a while coding, or maybe you're at home working from home, and it's really hard to get motivated when you're doing that stuff. But you get into the habit of going out to lunch, either you're going out to lunch with someone, going to pick up fast food, going to eat, garbage here and garbage there. How do we get out of that habit?
So there's so many things I love to talk about here, John. So what I always like to tell people I work with is, what do you want to change, right? So awareness is always step one. So some of those people, they don't want to give up those lunches out. So I always ask them, all right, if you're going to go eat out, can you just send me a picture of the menu or show me what you're eating, right? Because I always like to give hand analogies. So what do I mean by that? So if you're going to go out to eat, you should be looking for about a palm of protein. So using your palm, not your coworker's palm, right? That's about the amount of protein you should be having, one palm. So that's a piece of chicken breast, could be a piece of fish, could be a piece of steak, really anything. Then you should be having about one fist, your fist of carbohydrates. Now, if they bring up bread early on, that's going to be your carbohydrates. If you want to have rice, potatoes, pasta, it's that fist. And then finally, you want to look to get 2 fists of some sort of fruit or vegetable, right? So if you do go out to eat, how do we make it fit that? So every time I work with a client that loves those going out lunches, I always say, what's the vegetable you can focus on and make this a long-term effect? So that's the first thing. The other thing is, if you're okay with just eating a couple meals at the office, what are some things you can meal prep or bring with you, which could be a meal prep delivery service or something that you can cook at home, which just could have been dinner the night before. You just package it and bring it with you, which takes almost no time at all, John. So it's really trying to figure out what the person likes and how they like to do it. So if they like to go out to eat, everyone's got 2 hands, so they can figure that out with the palm and fist method, as I just mentioned, depending on what they're looking to do with their goals, or bring something from home.
Yeah, so that's good. So what about the rest of the day? Because, you hear a lot of people saying, oh, you need to be doing intermittent fasting. You need to be doing like the 16 and 8. You got to be doing, or skipping breakfast. Then other people say, oh, you've got to have a big breakfast. Got to eat, put all your nutrients there. Got to have a high protein breakfast. What is your take on that? And does it vary depending on the person?
It absolutely does vary with the person. However, what I've really seen with the people in this space is they typically do fall into the people that want to do fasting because they feel like that's what helps their schedule. And I like to throw this analogy out, John, and I'm going to ask you, if I were to give you 2 cars completely free and come visit me, one car is full of gas and the other car is empty, and you have to push it to come visit me, which one are you going to take?
Well, obviously the full one.
Obviously, the one with gas. And so many of us go into work without having breakfast because we feel like fasting is going to be that silver bullet. But you're pretty much driving your car, especially in the tech space, driving your car without any gas in it. So you're pretty much going to work without having energy or fuel to utilize what you're trying to do, especially these tasks, because you're now managing people. It's no longer, as you stated right on this call, coding. Mm-hmm. You may be doing some coding, but you're now managing people. And if you don't have the fuel to manage people, you're going to show up hangry, actually. And even some of the clients I've worked with, so I had a CEO I was working with, and he told me that after working with me for 2 weeks, his wife, who said was like, you're no longer showing up to the house hangry and upset, or grumpy was actually the word she used. And it was funny that she said that because it's not something I ever ask, or like, hey, does your wife think you're grumpy or not? But he said, he came on the call, he's like, my wife's actually really happy with what we're doing because I'm not showing up grumpy. And the thing was, we were just focusing on hydration and breakfast, right? So we have that fuel to get us through to that next meal. It's absolutely what you should do. And many people turn to fasting because, one, they think it's easier, and two, because they hear it might be helping with weight loss, and three, finally, it might help with testosterone. So it's easier, yeah, because you don't have to prep anything, but you're missing out on fueling your car or your brain to get through the day. That's the first thing. Two, with weight loss, ultimately, it's calories in, calories out at the end of the day. Now, making sure you eat some calories right when you wake up can actually help with that tail end, because so many of us get home, we eat dinner, and we're still hungry. And we might pick on our kids' snacks because that's what's in the pantry. If you work from home, you might think that you're grabbing a handful of nuts, but then it turns into 3 or 4 handful of nuts. You might go for that chocolate or the kids' chips or whatever's available, and you tend to eat more at night because you're not giving yourself that fuel early in the morning. And that's causing you to be hungrier later in the day. And then finally, in regards to testosterone, the research shows if you fast anywhere from once a week or once a month, then yes, it can help boost testosterone in the short term. However, if you decide to fast most days of the month, it actually can reduce your testosterone levels because you're not fueling your body adequately. So anyone that's looking to boost their testosterone should actually stay away from fasting. So those 3 things in itself should prompt anyone to start eating a breakfast. Now, when talking about breakfast, John, it should be something that is high in protein, because that's going to satiate or keep you fuller longer and help with the muscle building. And then you definitely want to include some sort of carbohydrate sorts, such as oatmeals, breads, some fruits or vegetables to give you that long, steady state energy.
So we talked about unpacking me and what I do sometimes and talking about that.
You're ready for it.
Yeah, so let's do that a little bit. When it comes to breakfast, sometimes so my wife and I did a diet a while back, and it was basically like a commercial. I don't want to say the company or anything, but it was like a commercialized diet where you ate like 6 prepackaged meals per day that were all like 100 calories, 150 calories, high protein, low carbs. And then at night you made your own dinner. They called it a lean and green. So you had like a meal that had roughly 6 ounces of a lean protein plus, 3 half-cup servings of vegetables of some sort. And they gave you a list of like ones you should pick. So that way you're not always picking, potatoes and corn for your vegetables. Yeah, you're picking something like green beans or something, broccoli or something a little bit healthier. So we did that for a while, and that was, good to get us into the habit of eating healthy and making better choices. And, after that I transitioned off. And now a lot of times what I do for breakfast is I'll have either a protein bar or just a protein shake. And, one of those, like, I don't know the name brands of it off the top of my head, but something that has like 30 grams of protein, 200 calories, no added sugar, etc. And that's kind of how I start my day most of the time. And a lot of times I'll do that for lunch as well, because I'll be busy, don't need to, don't want to get up, and I'll just say, I can just reach in my desk and grab, protein bar. And a lot of times I'll double up on that, have a protein bar, like around 10, and then another one, maybe around like 1:30 or 2, and then have something healthy at for dinner with the family.
Yep.
John, so what am I doing wrong?
Some of the people that I've worked with. Yeah. So there's a couple things I want, not doing wrong. There's areas of opportunity, John. That's what I like to call it. No one is ever doing anything wrong in regards to nutrition, because as long as you're eating, you're doing the best thing you can for your body, but there's always ways to optimize it, right? So for sure, when we're talking about longevity and then in the short term energy, I love that you're having protein. You should be having protein actually every 3 to 4 hours, regardless if you're trying to gain muscle mass or lose body fat.
Yeah, and at my age, being in the mid 40s, I definitely want to have as much protein as I can, just to prevent that muscle loss that starts happening.
Absolutely, right? So we'll talk about some sort of fitness as well, but when it comes to nutrition, which is one of the biggest things you can do, is eating protein every 3 to 4 hours. And it depends on the person, but somewhere about 30 grams of protein every 3 to 4 hours, depending on weight, right? So it's not a carte blanche, that's what you should be doing, but it's a good way to do it. So I love that you're having some sort of fuel in the morning, so that protein bar or protein shake. However, we'd love for you to stick to something that's more whole foods. And the reason being, John, is because I want you to imagine, what if that protein bar company goes out of business tomorrow? It might not, it probably isn't, but just in case, or the protein shake company, right? So I always like to tell people, I want you to, if you are going to have a protein bar or protein shake, try to limit to 1 or 2 a day, right? You don't want to be dependent on it. So what are some whole foods you could have, right? You can hard-boiled eggs are the easiest things you can keep in a fridge and pull up the next day. Greek yogurt is another one. Right now, cottage cheese is having its moment. These are just some simple and easy ones. Yeah, right? These are just some simple and easy ones that you can have. Now, based on what you're saying, if you're going to have a protein bar or protein shake in the morning, I would say, how can you add some sort of fruit or vegetable? Now, I'm pretty sure no one's waking up and like, hey, you know what'd be really good with this protein shake? I had a broccoli. So that's not what I'm trying to say here, John. So what fruit could you add to that lunch or that breakfast?
Yeah, like an apple or banana or something.
Boom. There you go.
Okay.
So those carbs are going to give you that focus and clarity so that we can maintain those blood sugar, that blood glucose that many people are talking about. So if we can keep it steady throughout the day, that's how we keep that steady energy throughout the day. So I love adding a piece of fruit in the morning. Now, that lunch that you mentioned, so many of the people I work with have the same thing you said there. I don't have time to eat something. I'm just in the flow. I'm just trying to get things done. Honestly, taking a break is going to help you 10 times more than pushing through. Now, if someone is so adamant about pushing through, this is when I will look up if they want to have a protein shake or a protein bar, or what is something they can keep in their fridge. Many of the people in the new leadership roles, they might have a little mini fridge in their office, or if they work from home, they have that fridge at home. Or ultimately, what can they keep that's very easy? So can they just eat? Honestly, I've timed it, John. And if I were to ask you to take a thing of Greek yogurt, a little container of Greek yogurt, and put some berries and granola in it, how long do you think it would take?
Probably 7 minutes, 6 minutes. Let's go with 6.
At max, right? I've timed it where I've had people get into 2 lines, and this when I was working in pro sports to build their own yogurt bowl. I had 2 teams of 10 make 10 yogurt bowls in less than 2 minutes. So to give you that idea, they were rushing through to make those bowls. So it can take as long as 6 to 7 minutes, but those 6 to 7 minutes for you to get back to your desk and just keep on grinding on your work, but being able to fuel yourself with adequate, real whole foods, that is going to be game changer for your blood glucose and nutrition. So one thing is maybe making a little Greek yogurt bowl, making a cottage cheese bowl. You could even have a sandwich. And again, making a sandwich, John, I've timed it as well. As much as people love to think it takes a long time, it takes less than a minute. Again, I've done these challenges with people because I like to show them it doesn't take that much time, right? If you're really rushing through.
Well, let me ask you this. So one of the things that I've noticed as I've been getting older is how foods affect me more than they did when I was younger. And I'm sure you hear this from a lot of people, but one thing you mentioned sandwich, and that's like a trigger for me, like bread. I noticed when I love bread. I absolutely love it. I love to eat bread as much as I can. Anything made out of bread that tastes like bread, that looks like bread, that feels like bread, I like it. Like donuts, cake, sandwiches, whatever. I love it all. But I've noticed the older I get, if I have like if I eat a sandwich, I'm fine, no problem. But if I eat a sandwich for lunch and then at dinner I have like bread too, the next morning my fingers will like hurt or my shoulders will hurt, my joints. I just feel something in my joints that it doesn't feel comfortable. And, I feel like I don't know if it's a gluten thing or if it's just like a too many carbs thing or what it is, but I notice it more with bread than anything else. Like if I have a sandwich for lunch and then the kids want pizza and we splurge and we get pizza for dinner, which we try not to do too often, but when I do that, like I'll feel it the next day. I know I'm going to. I'll be like in my head, I'm like, oh God, this is gonna suck tomorrow.
Yeah. And thanks for bringing that up because I absolutely love that. So one thing I love to preach is all foods should fit. So I want you to have pizza with your kids, John. I'm not going to take that away from you. However, being that the signs and symptoms you're stating, I would love for you to go get a blood test, right? To see if you are gluten sensitive, right? And a lot of these allergy tests that are out there now are not validated. You literally have to go to an allergist to get what's called a prick test where they prick your skin to see if you have a reaction to it. Now, in regards to celiac, which is what gluten is, you can get tested for that, and it is blood drawn, right? That's really the only ways to get checked. So it could be that you have a gluten sensitivity. However, the other thing I would beg to differ is something called the carb to fiber ratio that I love to teach to my clients. And what it could be is because you're having something that is going to be high in carbs and low in fiber. So what's happening, it could be causing your blood sugar to spike and then crash down. And it could be causing just the blood flow of things not going in the area it needs to be. And it's doing the same with your energy and with your hunger. So this carb to fiber ratio, if you're all right, if I share that.
Yeah. So I've read stuff about this before about how there's like an effective ratio that you should have. So like, net carbs and things like that.
Yes. So I'm so glad you brought that up because net carbs, unfortunately, is a marketing tactic. It has no science behind it. No, so you always see a lot of packages, let's say 20 grams of carbs and then 4 grams of fiber. So they do 20 minus 4, which is 16. And like it actually has 16 grams of fiber. Well, net carbs means absolutely nothing. It's just a marketing tactic to really geared towards the low carb fanatics. However, the carb to fiber ratio is when you take the total amounts of carbohydrates and you divide it by the amount of fiber. So let's use that 20 to 4 analogy. So 20 divided by 4 is 5. So anything that's 5 to 1 or less, so that's 1 to 1, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1, is what I like to call that premium fuel. And just take this back a moment. If we had 2 cars, we had a convertible, a Corvette, we know we're going to put premium gas in it, or a Maserati, so that it runs well. Now, there's nothing wrong with the Toyota Corolla. I've driven a Toyota Corolla. My mom owns a Toyota Corolla, and you typically put regular gas in it. But when you put premium gas, it gets a little bit more miles per gallon. Now, if you put regular fuel in that Maserati or Corvette, it's not going to run as well. So we want to put that premium fuel or that long-lasting fuel to not only maintain our hunger, but our energy level. So going back to that carb to fiber ratio, anything that's 10 to 1 and above is going to be that regular fuel. So that's going to make your energy spike and your blood sugars. So you want to find anything that's 5 to 1 or less around your work days. And if you're going to have anything that's 10 to 1 and higher, that's going to be before and after any kind of physical activity. So that'd be something your audience can implement today, and even yourself, John. And I'd love for you to get back to me and go through your pantry and see if there's anything that is premium and anything that is regular. Because so many of us go through, because there are breads out there. Two of my favorite brands are Ezekiel and then Dave's Killer Bread that typically fit that 5 to 1 or less model. And I'd love to hear if you have that reaction with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to, experiment with that, because I have noticed that sometimes I'll eat something and I'm like, oh, this is going to suck tomorrow. And then it doesn't. And it's like, what was that? I don't, and it's never something, it's always when I'm at a restaurant or something where I'm just like, oh, this bread looks delicious. And it's usually like a, brown bread or something that's, and I don't feel it the next day.
Yeah. So it could be some fiber that's in it. Bread contains a lot of nutrients. I love bread. Heck, I'm probably having a sandwich now that we're talking about it so much for lunch.
Yeah, I might do the same. So, we talked a little bit about nutrition. There's definitely a lot more to unpack. And one of the things that I do want to hit on the nutrition side is, just sugar in general, because it gets a bad rap, I think. But also, I'm not a fan of, I try to do like sugar-free stuff. And some people tell me that's terrible for me and I shouldn't do that. I should just do the natural stuff. And I don't know. I don't know what's right, what's wrong. So what is your take on it?
So when it comes to sugar, I always ask, what are you going to utilize it for? So it goes back to that fueling for performance, hence coffee, the company name. Yeah. Well, after what you told me what you ate, John, I have a feeling you're not eating enough carbohydrates, which is leading to that crash in energy, because carbohydrates are our energy source. Going back to the car analogy, it's what's going to give you that fuel. Proteins are going to be what helps build and maintain the muscle, but the energy source is carbohydrate. So when you add sugar to your coffee, yes, it is a carbohydrate source, but it's going to be that fast-acting energy, right? So do you add any creamer to your coffee?
So here's what I usually put, like a sugar-free creamer, and I don't put Splenda. I don't usually use any sugar at all, So I kind of just made that part up. But I do use like a sugar-free creamer, which probably has some kind of like Splenda or something, aspartame of some sort in there, I imagine.
Yep. So when it comes to what your goals are, if it's someone that's looking for weight loss, I think it's great because it's going to be a lower calorie option. When we're talking about longevity and gut health, those aspartames don't do as well in our gut microbiota or that gut brain axis. So again, I more look at the long term, and then just going back to sugars, how much activity are you doing? We were talking right before this that you were a slow runner. So if you are running, then absolutely you need to use that fuel, right? You need something that's going to help you recover from your workout, but also give you the energy for a workout. Just to give you an idea, some of the things I love to recommend before workout include like applesauce and oh my god, the Welch's fruit snacks, right? Which is something my kid eats. So I love it.
Great. Yeah.
But I know I'm utilizing it for my workout, not an afternoon snack, right? Because I know in the afternoon it's going to be a little bit more sedentary, so I don't need as much sugar to give me that boost for performance. So anytime I think about sugar, I think about what am I going to utilize this fuel for? And when it's going to be sedentary throughout the rest of the day, that's where I want to have more fiber so that my body can utilize that sugar a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that's great. So I think this is a good transition point to get into, activity and activity levels and things that you can do in your office or around the office to try to stay healthy. And, I have a little bit of advice that I've always given people to do. And the number one thing is just to have walking meetings.
Yes.
You're having a meeting and you shouldn't be looking at your screen, unless you're doing a Zoom meeting, I guess. But you need to be focusing on the person you're talking to. So instead of having a face-to-face meeting in a conference room or in your office, go a walk. And I try to do that with all my one-on-ones. And I'll typically have, 3 or 4 miles worth of walking meetings every day. just to get out there and get outside, enjoy the sunlight. Now it's getting a little bit, I'm in South Carolina. It's getting a little bit too hot right now, but we still have them in the mornings. Get them done before 10 and you're good. But that's my number one tip, is to have walking meetings. What are some things that you usually advise people to do just to stay, active in a professional role?
I love that, John. Walking meetings, taking the stairs, trying to park far from the building. Those are like the easy ones that we always hear. But being now that, especially with the tech people I work with, they like to wear a lot of wearables. So there's the Fitbits, the Apple Watches, Whoop is one I really like to utilize, Garmin's, all these things. So just tracking how much activity you're actually doing in the day, because sometimes we think we're doing more. So I always like to have data, because data is going to give us that feedback. So every time I hear someone like, oh, I'm crushing my workouts in the morning, but then I get feedback from the device I give them, I'm like, you really aren't. You're not really putting that much effort into it. You think like you are, but you're really not.
Yeah.
So again, what I like to do, I love the walking meetings idea. Right now on this meeting we're having, I'm actually standing up. So having a standing desk can be very helpful, and I love to utilize it. And a paper came out about 6 months ago that even doing calf raises while you're at your desk will actually help with your blood glucose or your sugar usage throughout the day. So if you can do calf raise now, they had people doing calf races all day. So maybe day one you might be a little sore, but your calves would get used to it, John. So calf raises can help getting up and stretching, going for walks. So I have people where I ask them, when do you have time throughout the day? And they might have 10 minutes after lunch where they might go for a quick walk and come back, and then 10 minutes before they get in the car. So it's really talking to the person and see how we can make it fit into their schedule. So it's really getting personalized, because the recommendation should be about 150 minutes of some sort of physical activity a week. Right? So doing those 3 to 4 miles that you're doing, John, you're being a leader. And that's what so many of the new people in tech need to learn. They need to be leaders and role models. And we're scared, because coming from a coding background, you're typically just sitting at your desk all day. And if you get up to walk with someone, it may be looked or frowned upon, or you think so, right? I've worked with a lot of the new CTOs, and that's one of the things. And they've started to include some of these walking meetings, as you mentioned, or just standing at their desks, or going for a walk, and they found it to be so helpful to show their community and the people they work with that they're able to prioritize their health so they can last longer in this industry.
Yeah. And there's a couple other things that I do too that I think are, just things that people need to talk about that they probably don't. I mean, look, I'm lucky I have an office. I can shut the door when I'm, after a meeting or something like that. But if I'm ever on a call and it finishes early and say, oh, I'm gonna give you like 10 minutes back, I will almost always get up and just do 25 push-ups. Just something simple that's, it takes a minute, if that, to knock out 25 push-ups and just get it done and sit back down. No big deal. And, usually before the end of the day, I'm doing 100 to 150 push-ups a day, which is, a really cool thing to do. And, I feel like my workout's mostly done at that point. But another thing that I recommend for anybody, especially with kids, so I've got 3 kids and that keeps me super busy. Going to sports and things like that. But we all, as a family, enrolled in martial arts together. So my wife, me, and all of my kids go do martial arts together. And that's twice a week of doing, a physical activity where, you have a little bit of exercise in there, you're stretching, you're getting fit together, and also learning a little bit of self-defense and things that you can do to help, build discipline within your life. And yeah, it takes time, it takes effort, but it's one of those things that you can do, while spending time with your family.
Absolutely, John. And a little inside of my family, I have a 2.5-year-old, and every afternoon I shut down the computer and go for a walk with her to the park, and we play at the park together. I know it's a little old school, but we live very close to a park, so we're lucky enough to be able to walk to one. But just including the people around you will make it so much better. So not only at work, but after work, as you mentioned, can you do a bike ride with your family on the weekends? Can you do it in the afternoons, especially now with daylight savings being a little bit later? The sun's out a little bit longer, so can you spend some time? Or if you're going to a kid's activity, can just walk around. Don't just sit and be on your phone, right? Again, going back to the new leader role, sometimes we're so into our phones because of email and making sure everything's going well. Maybe take a little break from it and just do a quick walk around the stands while you're watching your kids, or if they're at soccer practice, just walk the field a couple times while you're there.
Yeah, or volunteer to help coach. You don't have to be the head coach. Yeah. You may be like me and know, absolutely nothing about soccer. But you can go out there and at least go shag balls for them to kick them out.
Yeah. Exactly. I love that idea, John. But really, I just getting involved. And the one thing I didn't mention, which I think is important, is what can you do? So many people start a new plan and they get excited. It's a new gym plan. They have it. They're ready to go, but they can't be consistent with it. So whatever you can be consistent with is the most important thing. And that's where I see so many people fail, because they might try a new running program, or they might try a new high intensity interval training class, but they don't like it. But they know, they're like, oh, I saw my friend do it and they got the results, but they can't be consistent with it. And that's where I see the biggest challenge. Or they go all out and they're like, all right, I'm going to do every day for the next month, and they burn out too quickly. So it's really understanding what can they do consistently, and that's the key. And that's what's going to help them reach their goals at the end of the day. And that's not only in fitness, but also in nutrition, because they might jump on a fad. For example, they might do fasting during the week, but on the weekends they're not. It's the same thing. Just what are things you can do consistently that you actually enjoy with yourself, with your family, with your coworkers, that could be in the long term.
Yeah. And we try to set that, patterns with our family too. Like we, no fast food except for the weekends. If during the week, we're going to eat healthy Monday through Friday, no matter what. But on the weekends, if we want pizza, that's when we're going to get pizza. If we want to go Super Chicks and get some chicken sandwiches, that's when we're going to do that.
Yeah.
But nothing during the week if we can help it. But let me ask you, what do you do when you fall off the wagon? When you do, have that problem? Yeah, I know you talked about wearables. I have an Apple Watch, and I try to close out all 3 circles every day. That's like, something I'm going to do. And I had a streak of literally 268 days in a row of every circle. And then I tore my ACL. And of course I did it doing karate too, which goes back to the martial arts thing. But I tore my ACL, and it was like, I didn't hit that goal. Of course, then you're recovering from surgery, you're doing all that stuff. But it was like, a good month or two before I could even feel like I wanted to, hit those goals again. So what do you recommend to people that do fall off the wagon, that do feel like they've messed up? How do they get back started?
Man, that's such a great question, John. And I love to revisit your ACL injury and some things people can do if they are injured. But getting back on the wagon, again, it's personalized. And this is where I love to talk to the people I work with. And here's some easy things they can do. One, what is a list of 3 things you can immediately do to get back on the proverbial wagon? So what do I mean? I always come up with a list, because typically when I work with people, I work with habit changing, right? So it's people I work with anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And what we see is that at that 6 to 8 week mark, we see a regression, John. And the reason is because we set goals every week. And a goal every week, let's say we set 1 goal a week, that's 6 to 8 new goals being set. And the body goes back to the old habits and they fall off the wagon. So what I say to them is, this is the perfect time, because we want to know what are things that can help you get on. So for some people, and this is the most common ones, is 1, going for a walk. 2, having a sip of coffee. 3, just writing down something that you're grateful for. And that's a very simple thing to get you back on the wagon, because it doesn't have to be food related. It's just what's going to bring you back in that role model mindset. What's going to bring you back in to know why you're doing it, and having that why. Because many of the people I start with, the first thing I have them do is write the why. Because if they can remember that why and describe it to the best, that's the first piece. The second thing is I have them write a letter where they find their faults, where they might be falling off the wagon. Because again, the all or nothing mindset has probably led them to failure in regards to diet and nutrition. However, it's about breaking that all or nothing mindset. And being okay with having the weekend pizza, and being okay with having the weekend chicken sandwich. But the goal is, 1, how are you utilizing that fuel? But 2, how do we get back on the wagon and breaking that all or nothing mindset? Because it's not about doing perfection 100% of the time, right? I like to think that 80-20. So if we think about it, we actually have 21 meals a week, which is breakfast, lunch, and dinner, not including snacks. So if we did that 80-20 mentality, that means you get 17 meals to do exactly what you need to do, and you get 4 to do whatever you want. And then you can hit your goals. So I like to make it back to that numbers, right? Like, how can we get to those numbers? So if you look at your week, you can just gamify it. Did I hit all 17? Great. If not, where's that area of opportunity for us to work on? So it's just putting that into numbers. So making a list of 3 things that you can do to get back on that wagon, whatever that is for you. And the second thing is looking at it from a numbers game. Are you hitting it 17 out of 21 times? And if not, where do you need to make those fixes?
Yeah, no, I love that. I love the fact you broke that down, because I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss's work, and he talks a lot about the 80-20 rule. He also has a book, the 4-Hour Body, where he talks a lot about having that cheat day, where he just goes all out. And his cheat day is a little bit excessive in my opinion, but the fact that you just codified it there, where you could have 4 cheat meals a week, I mean that's more than we're doing. And I was like, man, that's awesome. I mean, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. And I always like to tell people, I don't like to call them cheat meals because you wouldn't cheat on anything else. I like to call them just, the meals that you typically enjoy. Nothing to worry about. It's just another meal, because when we put that cheat or treat on it, that's what's going to put us back on that falling off the wagon. Because it's like, oh man, I fell off the wagon because I had this pizza. It's like, no, you just had pizza. Move on. That's it.
Yeah.
What can you do to make that pizza better? Maybe you order a salad with it. Maybe you can get a piece of chicken breast. I'm not saying that's what everyone has to do, but just some ideas like, how can you make that meal a little bit more balanced? And that's what we're looking at, because that's how we can make it work so you don't feel like you've fallen off the wagon.
Yeah, that's another thing. You kind of struck something in my head when you said the chicken breast with it. One of the things my wife and I discovered is, like, during Thanksgiving, we used to always like pile our plates with a whole bunch of carbs and then put a little bit of turkey on there. What we found is we just like double our turkey, eat the turkey first, and then go back and get the carbs. You're not going to get nearly as much.
Absolutely. And
have that protein first is important.
Yes, prioritize protein. I always like to say, if you look at your plate and you're really struggling with eating in the sense that you feel like you overeat, I always say start with your veggies, then your protein, and then your carbs. And the reason being is that our stomachs aren't calorie counters, they're volume counters.
Yeah.
Meaning the more volume you can put in it, that means it's going to trigger that fullness. So I always tell people, if you are struggling with that kind of eating, start with some fruits and vegetables, right? If you're having a big salad, it's going to fill up. Because the other analogy I like to use, John, is I want you to think, if I had 10 grapes in one hand and then 10 raisins in the other, which one's going to take up more space, the 10 raisins or the 10 grapes?
Obviously the grapes.
The grapes, right? So that way our stomachs get fuller first. So by the time we get to those starchy carbs or anything that's really going to take up a lot of those calories, we're already full because our stomach's filling up with it.
Yeah, that makes sense of why we should have a salad first,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been helpful for me, and just to kind of walk through these things and think about things that we can do to stay active and stay healthy in our lives as leaders. But why is this important to do, while we're leading other people? Why is it something that we should do to take care of ourselves in order to help those around us?
John, I'm so glad you asked that. I guess we should have started with that, right? Like, why is this important? I was in those shoes just a couple years ago, where I was starting my business, learning to use a lot of tech as a dietitian, right? Like learning how to use Zoom before COVID made it cool. So let me state that. And working in this virtual space, I was doing a lot of sedentary things. So I was taking a lot of Zoom calls, sitting down. Mm-hmm. I noticed I started to slip in my own nutrition habits, and I would be grumpy with my wife. I would have low energy. I would have fatigue. I would have brain fog. And I'm like, what's going on? And it's because I was just so in my business and being a leader. I wasn't thinking about how being a leader and a role model to my family, to my wife, to my future kids, to the other people in my community around me, my friends, right? Because I wasn't fueling my body for what I was performing. And when I finally saw that I was able to change it, everything in my life got better, because 1, I was able to perform better. 2, I was able to be more tact with the decisions I was making, being better on my calls. Heck, there was even a point where I was having a Zoom call with a client, and they said to me, Tony, you just don't have the same energy. And I was like, thank you for calling me out. I literally turned around, stood up. I made a little standing desk in that moment, and they were like, whoa, you've completely changed your energy and everything. And I was like, yes, because it's important, because you want to be a role model, not only for the people you work with, but those at home, right? Those people that we get that precious time with. Whether you have a family or not, you want to take a hold of your free time. And if you're super low energy, all you're going to want to do is watch that next series. And that's most likely not what you really want to do. You really want to go out and be your best self. So the importance of eating well and exercising is not only for in the moment pleasure, enjoying yourself and being a role model for others, but the longevity of it, right? You don't want to work all these years to end up living in a nursing home. You want to work all these years so you can be the old person that's doing a bike trail or hiking, whether it's by yourself or with your family, right? You want to be out there with your kids. You don't want to just be stuck inside a nursing home, not being able to do anything. And I think that's where so many of us don't know those compound effects we're doing on our bodies by just sitting and eating, for lack of better words, the garbage that we stated earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. And, I actually did a solo podcast back several years ago, I guess probably like 5 years ago, where I talked about how you should put your oxygen mask on first. As after getting on a plane flight, the flight attendant said, always put your oxygen mask on first, then help those around you. And if you don't take care of yourself, you don't have the energy to take care of those around you. So if you do have a family, or if you do have, employees that report to you that you want to be a good leader for and a role model for, as you said, then we've got to put our oxygen mask on first. We've got to take care of our body first.
Yep. And it's looked down upon because old old ways are just keep working, burn the candle at both ends. But that's what leads to burnout. And so many of the people I've worked with, when they start to show what it's like to be a true leader and not a manager, that's when they get more buy-in. They get better productivity, not only from themselves, but from their employees, right? And being new in this field, if you are the person that is leading your company, you need to show that you can be a role model and not just fit another peg in the hole.
Yeah, 100%. I think you've got to take that extra initiative to show that it's okay to not work 10 hours a day. It's okay to leave on time. It's okay to prioritize going to the gym. It's okay to prioritize taking walking meetings and taking, time outside in the sunlight, getting that vitamin D and stuff like that. I think that's important to show that, it's okay to do those things.
Absolutely. And invite your employees that you're working with. You can have a picnic lunch outside, right? You can invite them for a walking meeting, like do something different, as you stated, and include everyone, right? How can you make it so that's interactive for them? Take them away from where they're typically at, and that'll help them come up with new ideas that they probably didn't even know they had in their heads.
Yeah. And another tip on that too is like when you're out walking, if you're doing your one-on-ones in your office, it's kind of intimidating for someone to come into your office and talk to you sitting in front of your desk. You look all powerful, but if you're out there walking, you're side by side, your peers, you're just talking to a friend, and they're way more open to share with you insights that are important that they may be afraid to share with you when you're sitting in your office.
Absolutely. I can totally agree with that, John.
Yeah. Plus just moving around, I think it does something in your brain. There's a book I read probably like 5 or 6 years ago called Spark, where it talked about how physical activities generate ideas. Yeah, I think just be outside and moving around, you're going to come up with ideas that you won't get sitting inside of an office.
Yep, that neuroplasticity. So creating new neurons to come up with new ideas. So I love that idea, John.
Yeah. So Tony, this has been great. I feel like it's helped me get motivated again to make sure I stay on track of things. How can people connect with you online, learn more about the things that you offer, and follow you to get more information and more tips?
Absolutely. So I made a link on my website. So it's nutritionfp.com/a-geek-leader. Altogether, one word, nutritionfp.com/a-geek-leader. And there's 3 things on there. At the bottom, you'll find a executive wellness check-in form, which will give you an assessment of 10 questions to see how you're doing on your own health. The second thing you'll get is a free habit tracker that I've given to my clients. It can help you change a habit within 30 days. And finally, the last thing is just a call. If you feel like this was the right fit for you and you'd love to learn more about working with me, that's that third thing. So those 3 things. And just as a reminder, that's at nutritionfp.com/a-geek-leader. I've been there. The people I work with have been there, right? Just struggling, not having the energy and masking it with tons of coffee, as you mentioned, John, not really knowing where to start, inundated with all the information out there because there's so much nutrition crap out there. And sorry for saying that, but it's true. And really being inundated and not knowing where to start and not having the right information. So many people I've worked with, they feel like they do, but they keep running circles and going back to the same place instead of finding something that's personalized. So that's a big mistake I've seen, not only in myself, but the people I've worked with. So I want to say I've been there, and it's a struggle. So you have to find a way to get out of it to be the best role model, not only, again, in your business, but also for your family.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll link all that up in the show notes too at geekleader.com. So if people go there and connect over. Tony, this has been a great conversation. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate all the energy that you put into helping people get fit and stay healthy and have that longer life and more energy while they're at work and doing the things that are important to them.
Thanks for having me on, John. I really do appreciate it. And remember to hydrate or dihydrate.
If you enjoyed that episode, please leave a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. I'd greatly appreciate that. And also, don't forget to check out merch. We have some T-shirts that I've designed that are on at geekleader.com. You can click on the merchandise section there and check that out. And also, don't forget about the books from our guests. So if you like this guest and other guests that have written books, please go ahead and check that out at geekleader.com. I would greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure they would too.